This week's shiur is on Parshat Naso. There are two shiurim from last year on TorahAnytime.com. From last year, there was a shiur called Make It Mine, and from the year before, there was a shiur called Untenable. So I would advise you, if you can, if you've got the time, if you haven't got the time, make the time. Try and listen to those two shiurim. There are some very interesting insights there. Okay, so on to this week's parasha. So it says, in the beginning of the parasha, let's skip the first perek. Let's go to perek Hey. So perek Hey, pasuk Yud and pasuk Yud Aleph. What does it say there? Here, not Yud and Yud. No, Tet and Yud. Go to pasuk Tet and Yud. It says, V'chol truma l'chol kodshei b'nei Israel, asher yakrivu lakohen lo yihye, v'ish et kodashav lo yihiyu, ish asher yiten lakohen lo yihye. If you notice the Hebrew, there's the word lo occurring, I think, at least 3 times there. Let me explain what we're talking about here. We're talking about giving a priestly donation to the Kohen. When we give the priestly donation to the Kohen, the pasuk says, every portion from any of the kodashim, any of the holy gifts that the Bnei Israel bring to the Kohen, shall be his. If you bring somebody a present and you give it to him, of course it's his. The next pasuk continues. Every portion from a man's holies shall be his, and what a man gives to the Kohen shall be his. Of course, again, the same question applies. You give somebody something, of course it's going to be his. It's not going to be yours or somebody else's. It's going to be his. It's a one-way transaction. It doesn't stay with you. It goes to him. So why this repetition? Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So I'll give you a simple answer, and then I'll give you a little bit more of a deeper answer. The simple answer is that the person giving the gift to the Kohen has the right to give it to any Kohen he wishes. It's not the sole property of any Kohen who wants to come and grab it, or a Kohen doesn't have a God-given right to come and take that particular gift. It's a gift which is for the Kohen, for the general Kohen populace. So therefore, the right as to which Kohen gets the gift lies with the donor. Yeah? So that's why it says the gift is his, meaning the person. The right stays with the person who's giving the gift. That's a simple answer. Now, to give the deeper answer, I'm going to tell you a story and I'm going to explain. Once upon a time in Yerushalayim, there was a yeshiva. I believe it could be Slobodka. It could be one of the yeshivas that was being built in the 20s. And the rabbis were going around asking for donations for this particular yeshiva. And it happened there was one person who was a very wealthy person, a very wealthy Jew. His name was Mr. Schiff. And this Mr. Schiff donated a significant amount of money to this yeshiva, and the yeshiva got off to a very good start. Now, as time went on, this particular gentleman, Mr. Schiff, made a few investments that didn't quite go his way, and one thing led to another, and in the end, from being a person who owned buildings, he ended up having to resort to, he lost so much money, he ended up having to rent a cellar in one of the buildings he used to own. He was so destitute by this point. Now, who knows why these things happen? Only Hashem knows. Now, it happened that the rabbi who'd started the yeshiva found out, maybe inadvertently, but he found out that this Mr. Schiff, who started this yeshiva, and put it on such a good footing, had become now very, very poor. So the rabbi was extremely upset, and he went and he found a loan of like a large amount of money. I think it was something like $5,000. And he found this Mr. Schiff. And he said to him, look, I feel terrible that you've fallen on bad times. I've arranged for this loan for you. Here, take this money. So now this Mr. Schiff, you would expect him to say, Rabbi, that's amazing. How could you have even thought about me? I thought you'd forgotten and nobody cares about me. This Mr. Schiff, his reaction was completely opposite. As soon as he saw the money, he got a shock. He said, Rabbi, you want to take away my mitzvah? You want to take away the only thing that I've got going for me now in my life? That money that I gave to start the yeshiva is the only thing that can never be taken away from me. It is in Shamayim, it stands for me, and it's mine. Now you want to give me a loan to offset that mitzvah? He says, no way, I'm not taking any money. And he refused point blank. What do we understand from this? That the reason why the Torah is saying the word lo to him means that the right of giving this gift to the Kohen is with the giver and the giver alone. His zechut, the money that he's giving or the gift that he's giving, is transitory. It can't, in a physical perspective, it's given to the Kohen and that's it. It comes and it goes. But the spiritual reward is lo. Spelled Lamed Vav. It's for him and it can never ever be taken away from him. It's something that stays with a person. So really the word lo is referring not to the Kohen, but it's referring to the giver or the donor. You see how important it is? When you give money, you think that you're being, generous. And there's another word I'm thinking of. You think you're being magnanimous. That's a more magnificent word. You're being magnanimous. And you're giving and you feel good. Oh, this guy, he couldn't do anything without me. And I set him straight. And I put him, I helped him. So I must be good. I'm the great giver. But it's not him that's benefiting. It's you that's benefiting. You're the one who's accruing the mitzvah. He's just a hechi timtza. He is a vehicle for you to do the mitzvah, for you to get the mitzvah in Shamayim. Okay, let's move on to the next perek. And I'm actually going to go full circle by the end because I want to tell you a nice story. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order today. So let's go to perek Vav. And let's talk about the Nazir. What's a Nazir? What's a Nazirite? Nazirite, for those who don't know, is somebody who's taken a vow to abstain from any product relating to wine and to grapes. So, a person who takes that oath, it lasts for 30 days, he has to abstain from wine, grapes, and any product related to grapes, even grape pips, or for Americans, pits, or grape skins. Can have no benefit whatsoever. There's other laws as well. He mustn't be tamei mate, he mustn't make himself impure by contact with a dead body, God forbid. There's a few things that he has to do. So when he finishes his term of Nazirut, his term of being a Nazirite, it says the Pasuk, Perek Vav, Pasuk Vav, it says, Kol Yemei my eyes are getting worse. Kol Yemei Haziro Ladonai, Al Nefesh Meit Lo Yavo. It says, all the days of him abstaining from drinking wine and grape products, for the sake of Hashem, he shall not come near to a dead person. And then it says, it carries on, Kol Yemei Nizro Kodeshu Ladonai. It says all the days that he's stopping, he's holy to Hashem. And then, what does he do? He's allowed at the end of his term to drink wine and eat grapes. But the pasuk still refers to him as a Nazir. It doesn't say an ex-Nazir or a person. It calls him a Nazir. It's like saying that a person, he's given kapara, he's given atonement for his sin, but you still call him a sinner. That's not right. You don't call somebody who was a drug addict and he's come out of what do they call it, Betty Ford clinic, and now he's clean. He's done his cold turkey and he's clean. You don't call him drug addict. You don't even mention the word drugs in connection with him. He's finished with that now, presumably and hopefully. So why are you, lahavdil, why are you referring to the ex-Nazirite as a Nazir? So there's a very beautiful answer to this, and this really is a musar for everybody, myself included. And it's from the Al-Sheikh HaKadosh. He says we still consider him a Nazir. It's not a bad thing necessarily. We're going to see there is a bad side to being a Nazir. We're going to see it a little bit later, B'ezrat Hashem. But it's not a curse to say he's a Nazir. We consider him a Nazir because he has gone through his term of being a Nazir. He's learned the lessons that he should have learned, which is why he became a Nazir, and he's taken those lessons with him. It's so important. When you go through a process in life, when you go through a diet plan, let's talk practical, and you, at some point, let's say it's a very strict diet plan, like one of these liquid nutrition diets, and you come to the end of that, and now you can go back to a semblance of eating normal food, obviously with moderation. But you finished your aggressive dieting. Now, what do you do if you just go back to your old self and you start eating and you continue eating and then you eat the wrong things and you eat more of the wrong things? Then you're just going to put on more weight than you had before. You haven't learned the lesson of your aggressive dieting period. The point is, you're just supposed to get the lesson that you've learned and inculcate it, put it into your mind, put it into your heart, and take it with you. The same thing with the Nazirite. His 30-day period is like, I say lahavdil, it's like aggressive dieting. He's got a 30-day period to clean himself up. Now that he's come to the end of that period, he can't just forget it. He's got to take it with him, he's got to make it his. Once you make it yours, now you're like, you own that Nazirite perspective. Now it's yours. Now the lesson is yours. You don't need to refrain from wine products now. You don't need to grow your hair. You don't need to stay, well, you should stay away from dead bodies. But you don't have to go through that whole process again because you have it with you. The practical bit you've done. But now you've got it on your heart. That's why we still call him a Nazir. Because somebody who now finished, presumably he's taking the lesson with him. So whenever somebody goes through a process, and it doesn't have to be dieting, it could be anything. We can refer it even to Chagim. We're coming up to Shavuot now. What's the lesson of Shavuot? Kabbalat Torah, receiving the Torah. And the precious import of leading a Torah lifestyle. That's not just for Shavuot, that's for the whole of a person's life. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they are days of tshuva. They're days of judgment. We're supposed to take the lesson with us. We said Yom Kippur. What about Ne'ilah? What's Ne'ilah mean? Ne'ilah means lin'ol. From the word lin'ol means to lock up. You're supposed to take all the lessons you learned from Elul, Rosh Hashanah, 10 days of Teshuvah, and Yom Kippur, and lock it up with you. It's not just for one day. I always say this phrase that the non-Jewish world came up with. It's a brilliant phrase. I mean, it's the concept maybe needs a bit of work, but they say a dog is for life, not just for Xmas. That's what they say. Okay. What does it mean? It means people get presents of dogs and cats or whatever they give on Xmas. And, they get a little tiny puppy or a little tiny kitten. And it's very cute until it starts to grow big, so it starts to get more demanding. Now they get fed up of it, they just let it loose. And now this dog has got no mother, no father, no owner, nothing. Gets loose on the street. How do you know what's going to happen to this dog or this cat? Now that even if it has a mother and a father that's still around, once it has human interaction, once the humans handle it, the other cats, like the mother and the father and whoever, can sense it's had human interaction, had human hands touch it, and they won't get anywhere near it. I heard this before, actually, with kittens. Stray kittens, if you put your hands on them, the parents won't want anything to do with them. So it's so important. You don't just have a cat and that's it. Once it's finished its usefulness, you get rid of it. That's not what we're supposed to be in this world for. We're supposed to take the lesson and keep it with us. Otherwise, what's the point of the lesson? What's the point of Shavuot if we don't get that lesson of the importance of receiving the Torah and keeping the Torah with us and keeping it fresh every day? You have to keep it fresh like we received it there and then every day. So all the lessons of all the Chagim, we're supposed to keep them and make them a part of us. That's the lesson of the Nazir from that particular pasuk. Now, another interesting sugyan, interesting topic that's brought in this week's parasha is the idea of the sota. What's the sota? The sota is a woman who's been suspected of infidelity. Her husband has a strong suspicion that she's been secluded with a man, and it has to be proved. You can't just make an accusation. She has to drink water which has been mixed with the dissolved parchment where Hashem's name has been written on. And once that parchment has been dissolved into this water, she drinks the water, this woman who's been suspected. And then one of two things can happen. Either if she's guilty, her stomach expands and she explodes, or if she is innocent, then she becomes pregnant. So this is the idea in a nutshell of the sota. And it's brought next to the story of the Nazir, of the one who abstains. Why are these two ideas brought together in the same parasha? We know there's two concepts brought back to back. There's a lesson we can learn from it. What is the lesson we can learn from this? Well, the famous answer, the person who sees the sota woman in her shame, being exposed, they have to uncover her hair. It's a very nasty process. So the one who witnesses this sota woman in her shame should learn the lesson of infidelity and should take upon himself the promise of Nazirut, to become a Nazir. Should take on that. So the simple question is asked, isn't this a bit extreme? So there's somebody who witnesses the trial of this lady. That is enough for a person to come and start abstaining from wine and grapes and he has to have his hair grow. What is all this? Isn't it a bit of an extreme measure? So the answer is, I believe this is the answer given by the Slutsker Rav, the Oznaim LeTorah Rav. Oh, he's gone out of my mind now. The name's gone out of my mind now. The Oznaim LeTorah is the name of the Sefer. It's the Rav of Slutsk. Maybe his name will come to me in a minute when I'm not thinking of it. So he says like this. He says you have to understand what you're dealing with here. You're not dealing with any type of test. You're dealing with a Yetzer Hara. Now the Yetzer Hara will stop at nothing. That's his job. You've got to commend him because he's doing his job. Now we also have to do our job. If he comes, first of all, if we see the sota in her shame, we have to realize that we've been exposed to this for a reason. If a person sees, God forbid, a tragedy, you're supposed to see it for a reason. You're supposed to take a lesson from it. You're supposed to understand that you're having witnessed this is not by chance. So what do? We have a reaction to this. Now, the reaction is to become a Nazir. Now, what's the idea of a Nazir? You cannot drink wine. Now, when we're dealing with the Yetzer Hara and wine go back a long, long way, back to the days of Noach, when the Yetzer Hara disguised himself and I don't know if he disguised himself, exactly what disguise it was, but he approached Noach and said, look, I see you're planting a vineyard, you're planting seeds to make vines. This was the first thing Noach did when he left the ark. Noach said, yeah, I'm planting, I want to drink wine. So he made a deal with the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, and cut a long story short, Noach drank the wine and he got drunk and some very bad things happened. Just goes to show you never make a deal with the devil. Also, one question which I have, which I want to throw out there to the public, if you have an answer to this question, send me an email to rabbikalati@gmail.com. My question is, didn't Noach twig that something was wrong when he encountered this person who wanted to make a deal with him? Because he should have realized, hang on a minute, there was me, there was my wife Nama, there's my 3 sons, there's the 3 wives, that makes 8 people. I haven't seen this guy before. He's not one of the 8. Who is he? Why does he want to make a deal with me? I thought everyone died in the flood. Didn't he twig that this person was somebody he didn't recognize from the ark? If anyone's got an answer, I'd be very happy to receive an email from you, and maybe we'll speak about it if I get something interesting. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so the Yetzer Hara. So the Yetzer Hara is not to be trifled with. So he will take the wine, which again, he's got this age-old association with, and he'll make us drink, and when we drink wine, we're weak. We become very powerless. We become very malleable and not maneuverable, become very easily influenced. So as soon as we start drinking, and one drink doesn't lead to 2, one drink leads to 7. As anyone, Baruch Hashem, I'm not a drinker, but I have on a reliable authority that a person who is accustomed to drinking doesn't just have a little tipple and then stops at that. He takes a drink and then another and another and another until he's lying on the floor, or worse. So as soon as we start drinking, he's got us in his grip. So we want to say like this: we don't want anything to do with you. You're not somebody who we can just have a little bit and that's it. You're not somebody who we can just enter into a little bit of a partnership and draw the line. You're not going to be happy until we've ended up drunk and doing things of a debased nature, and until we're completely the opposite of how we are now. So therefore, what's the only solution for you, Mr. Satan, Mr. Yetzer Hara? We have to cut ourselves off completely. A drug taker, we don't tell him, you know what, we can see you like drugs, so just have a little bit of marijuana, just a little bit every day. So to just have, to keep you happy, and that's it. Of course, we're not going to tell him that, because one bit is going to lead to 10 bits. So you tell him, keep away from it completely. The drinker, again, like we said, you don't just tell him, look, just have 1 shot of whiskey and that's it. Even if he says, okay, he's not going to stick to it. So you keep him away from it completely. You keep the drug taker away from his drugs completely. It's got to be complete separation. It's got to be a barrier. So that's why we take these extreme measures. And the lesson we learn is that there are some addictions that are not to be trifled with. You can't take things in short measure. It's not like a diet. Like we have these amazing, and don't get me wrong, they are amazing. We have amazing diets nowadays, Slimming World and all these other diets that tell you that you can eat decently, not to excess, but you can eat decently if you eat the right things in the right combination. Of course, everybody has to eat. You can't just say, I have an eating problem, I'll starve, because you'll die. So there you have to take things in moderation. There has to be a midway. But things that are absolute addictions, like we mentioned previously, there has to be a complete barrier. Especially if a person is vulnerable. Because if he's seen this Sota lady in her disgrace, it's a lesson to him that he's vulnerable. He has to keep away, has to make a complete separation. He cannot enter into any deal with his addiction. He cannot enter into any deal, no matter how minor, with the Yetzer Hara. And I'll tell you a story about Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes once gave a shiur on Erev Shabbat, Friday night, and there was a young wife who was at that shiur, and she stayed at the shiur to the end. It finished very late. So she came home, and already the Shabbat candles were out, everything was dark, and her husband had been waiting for her, and he wasn't best pleased. Let's put it that way. In fact, he was furious. And he said, "Where have you been?" She said, "I was at the shiur. I was with the shiur with Rabbi Meir." And he was so furious, he said, "I'm not going to let you back in the house. The only way you can come back into my house is if you go back to Rabbi Meir and you spit in his face." Can you imagine such a thing? So now, this poor woman doesn't know what to do. How could she go and spit in the rabbi's face? The worst thing you can imagine. The worst chutzpah. And not just anybody, this is Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. We say, Elakada Meir Aneni. So now this woman is in a bit of a position. On one side, she's got Rabbi Meir. On the other side, she's got her husband. And she's got Shalom Bayit. What's she going to do? So, let's cut to the other side of the story. Meanwhile, Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes gets a visit from Eliyahu Hanavi, nonetheless, no less. And Eliyahu Hanavi tells Rabbi Meir, he says, "You know what happened? There was a lady at your shir, and she went back home, and her husband said she's not going to let her back in unless she spits in your face." And basically, Eliyahu Hanavi told Rabbi Meir the whole story. So now Rabbi Meir is aghast. So what does he do? Rabbi Meir hatches a plan. He sees this woman. I don't know, maybe she comes back to the shul, and he says, "Look, I've got a problem with my eye." And he says, "I just can't see in my eye. Whatever. Maybe like a piece of dust in your eye makes you blink." So he's sitting there saying, "Oh, I can't. Does anybody know how to cure eye infection?" So Rav Meir sees the lady, this woman, and he says, "You can come and help me." She says, "Well, I don't know how to cure eye problem." He says, "Don't worry, I know. You have to spit in my eye 7 times, and that will cure my problem." So now she says, "Okay, Rabbi, you're telling me I have to do it." So she spits in his eye 7 times, and then Rabbi Meir says to the lady, he says, "Now go back and tell your husband that you wanted me to spit in Rabbi Meir's eye once. I did it 7 times." So she goes back, and that was it. Now, that's not the end of the story. Because Rabbi Meir's Talmidim, Rabbi Meir's students, come back to Rabbi Meir and say, "Rabbi, why did you do such a thing? That was how you solved the problem? You should have sent for the husband to come here, and we'll give him malkut, we'll give him lashes. How dare he say such a thing? How dare he put his wife in such a position like that because his wife went to a shiur? That's the reaction?" Rabbi Meir says, "No." He says, "I'm just Meir," he said. He said, "Better for this to happen than, God forbid, something else to happen. Better for, I don't want to stand on my kavod." Now, this story is a little bit strange, because really and truly, the husband was at fault. He shouldn't have said such a despicable thing, shouldn't have put his wife in such a terrible situation. So why did Rabbi Meir consent to this humiliating act? So to answer this, we're going to compare it to the Sota. Now the Sota, the Hashem could have found another way of either proving the lady's innocence or showing her to be guilty. What did Hashem decide? Hashem said, look, write my name on a parchment, and not just, the Lord or something. Write Hashem's name written in its form that we're not allowed to put on the floor, God forbid, and put it into the water, make it, dissolve it, and then she should drink it. But that involves destroying Hashem's name written on parchment. How could Hashem have warranted such a thing? We're not allowed to do that. There's these stories about in the Second World War where, or maybe around the time of the Second World War, where the Melamed would write the name of God on a blackboard, and once they wrote the name of Hashem, they wrote Yud Kei Vav Kei in proper writing on the board, and you can't rub it out. So what do? They broke out that section of the blackboard and they kept it. They never erased it. Why would they do such a thing? Because to show you such an extent, you're not allowed to rub out Hashem's name. But Hashem himself is sanctioning his name to be erased. Why did Hashem do such a thing? The answer is, Hashem said, better for my name to be erased than for there to be a lack of shalom bayit between a husband and wife. Ad kedei kach, so far Hashem goes to show that there should be peace in the home between a husband and a wife. Hashem allows his name to be erased. So the same thing here. Now, of course, the husband was wrong in this story to go and say such a terrible thing to his wife and not allow into the house. But there's something else important called shalom bayit. So Rabbi Meir said, look, no matter how wrong the husband is, we want to preserve the shalom bayit. There has to be a way of doing this where that gets preserved. Now you might turn around to me and say, look, the guy really does deserve a whipping. He might get away with it again. And the answer is maybe so. But if you're going to give things a chance, you have to try the shalom bayit method. We say Elu Dovrim She'en Lehem Shiur. We all say every day the things that are limitless. You don't have a limit to the reward you get for these things. One of these, V'habat Shalom ben Adam ben Ish ve'ishta. How's it go? V'habat Shalom ben Ish ve'ishta. Making peace between a husband and his wife. That's one of the things. It's immeasurable. It's infinite, the reward you get for this. You cannot get the reward in this world because it's so great. It's impossible to translate into this world which has limits. So you see how important it is to maintain shalom bayit. Now, we talked about the positive aspect of the Nazir, of the Nazirite. He's taken on these restrictions. He wants to put himself at a no-risk boundary where he doesn't want to infringe and he doesn't want to be victim to drinking, etc., and to get himself into the position of the Sota. But actually, the Nazir is considered a sinner. You know that? It's not something honorable that one takes on. Otherwise, we'd all be Nazirites. We'd all take on all these restrictions. But it's not necessarily a good thing to become a Nazirite. Why? Because a person is in effect missing out on the lesson of what it is to be in this world. The lesson that we have to be in this world is quite simply to take the material aspect and elevate it and make it spiritual. So whereas a person may be in a position where he has to become a Nazir, it's not honorable because wine also has a good aspect. Wine, although it can be used for terrible things, can also be used for the greatest things. Need I have to mention Kiddush? or drinking a cup of wine at a wedding, or benching over a cup of wine. There are so many things that wine is used positive. So when a person becomes a Nazir, he limits himself from this. He cannot make that kiddush. He cannot go to a wedding and drink the wine. So he's limiting himself. He's missing the point of life. We're supposed to take the material and make it kadosh and eternalize it. So that's why it's not 100% good to become a Nazir. So in that case, we should ban the whole idea completely. Why are we talking about it in the Torah? The answer is a person can feel a weakness in himself. So he has no option than to become a Nazir. He has to take those vows of abstinence. That's the reason why we say a Nazir has to become a Nazir. He has to have that barrier. But ultimately it comes from weakness. A person should know that you shouldn't be weak. It's not an excuse. The person should say, I'm a weak character and that's how I'm going to be, period. That's not the idea. If you're weak, you have to get over that weakness. I needn't tell you the age-old saying that Hashem doesn't give us a test which He knows we can't pass. Now, a test is not supposed to be easy. A test, by definition, is supposed to be something that's going to take our energies and our efforts to do. And some tests are harder than others, and some tests are near impossible. But no test is completely impossible. So if we find it hard, it's either that we haven't put enough effort into it, or we don't know the right way to tackle that test. But the test is meant to be tackled, otherwise it would not come our way. It goes against the rules that Hashem set in place in this world. He's not going to give us a test that's irrelevant to us. Hashem doesn't put irrelevant things in our way. He puts things in our way which are definitely relevant and which are red letter items, which require our attention and our immediate attention. Doesn't mean we have to do everything all in one go. It means we have to recognize it and start the machine in motion. So now I'm going to move on in Perek Vav. I'm going to move on to Pasuk Chaf Gimel. Daber el Aaron vel banav leimor. Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, which are the Kohanim, Ko tuvarchu et bnei Israel amur lahem. Say to bnei Israel, this you should bless to bnei Israel and say to them. And then we have the priestly blessing. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Hashem panav v'lecha, v'yichuneka, Yisa Hashem panav v'lecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. V'som shvi al bnei Israel v'ani avarachem. This is the famous blessing which fathers have given to sons, mothers to daughters, Kohanim to just about everybody. It's a famous blessing. But there's an interesting midrash on this particular blessing. The midrash says that Bnei Israel, when they knew that Hashem was going to instruct the Kohanim to bless all the Jewish people, the Jewish people were not happy with this. They said, we don't want the Kohen's blessing. We want your blessing. They said to Hashem, we want you to bless us. And Hashem replied and said, don't worry, they will bless you, but I will finish the blessing, because at the end you see, V'samu et shemi, let them place my name, al bnei Israel, onto the children of Israel, and I will bless them. You see that? We think we're getting the Kohen's bracha, which as Sephardim we get every day. Ashkenazim get it only on Chagim. Do we think we're getting the blessing of the priest? It's not. It's the blessing of Hashem through the priest. The priests are the channel for Hashem's direct bracha. So what's this idea? How can we turn around and say, we don't want the Kohen's blessing, we want your blessing? And what's the idea? Why were we not happy with their blessing? So the answer is that really and truly, no matter how well-intentioned the Kohanim are, and they are, of course they are, only Hashem knows what is truly good for us. Because if Hashem left it to the Kohanim, let's say, and they blessed us with, you should all be rich, you should all be healthy, you should have children who are osek b'Torah, banim or v'nei banim, and come up with all sorts of brachot, that doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. Because a person will become rich if Hashem wants him to be rich. Why? Because Hashem knows whether he needs to be rich. And a person will become poor because the person needs to be poor. And only Hashem knows that. The Bnei Israel were in effect complaining. They were saying, don't leave it to the Kohanim. Because they may not know all our individual requirements. Only you know what's best for us. So Hashem said, don't worry. So they will bless you, but their blessing will be vague. It will not go into specifics. And I quote for you the priestly blessing. May Hashem bless you and safeguard you. It's all in Hashem. May God bless you. It's all God doing the blessing. May Hashem light up his face for you and be gracious to you. That's not talking about anything specific or anything relevant. May Hashem lift his face to you and give you peace. Now, peace is relevant to everybody. It's very vague. It doesn't go into anything in particular. And at the end of it, Hashem says, don't worry. I will fill in the blanks. You will just get the blessing in general. I will say who's going to be sick, who's going to be well, who's going to be rich, who's going to be poor, who's going to get whatever challenges, who's going to get whatever benefits. Nobody knows that better than Hashem himself. And just to finish off, I'm going to talk about probably the most famous thing that people always mention when they talk about this week's parasha. And that is the offerings of the 12 tribal chiefs, the heads of the tribes. Now, I've talked in previous shiurim about how they were all the same. Why does Hashem put in his holy Torah 12 whole sets of identical offerings which were each tribal chief gave exactly the same? What's the point? Just say, and all the 12 tribes gave so-and-so offering, and that's it. Make the Torah brief. Give the bar mitzvah boy who's got Parashat Naso, give him a break. Let him say a shorter parasha. It's the longest parasha in the Torah. Now, in previous shiurim, we talked about the idea that how special it was that they all, of their own accord, gave the same offerings because nobody wanted to have any one-upmanship. They didn't want one person gave a particular offering and the second one didn't come up and say, look, I want to give something different or better. He gave the same. And the third and the fourth all went with that trend. They all gave exactly the same. But I'm going to tell you a story now, and I'm going to finish with this story. This is a story about the Rav of Kovno, who I've mentioned previously, Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. Now, Rav Yitzchak Elchanan lived at a time when there was national conscription. Now, anyone who goes into the army and gets sent to some non-Jewish, terrible army service where they've got no semblance of Jewish life, that's basically the end for them. I mean, that's not even mentioning the sakana, the danger that a soldier has when he goes, in the front line. So any person who gets conscripted into the army, it would mean more than certain death. Or spiritual death, because you cannot keep up your Yiddishkeit. So it happened that there was a Talmud of Rav Spector who received a draft to go into the army. Now Rav Yitzchak was trying desperately for a way to find this person to get out of his army conscription. They just couldn't find a way, and he tried and he tried and he tried. And it just so happened that one day Rav Yitzchak was in I think it was a Beit Din meeting with another two Rabbanim, and they were discussing a very, very important matter, and there was a knock on the door, and they said, "Who is it?" And somebody came in and said, Rabbi Spector, fantastic news. The fellow who you're trying to get him out of army service, he's been released. They've rejected him, and he's not going to go to the army. Rav Yitzchak was delighted. He said, "Thank you so much for bringing me this good news. That's amazing." And the fellow goes out. Now, the three Rabbanim continue with their work and discussing and going back and forth, and whatever it was so important, they were getting involved. Again, a knock on the door. Come in. Rav Spector, Rav Yitzchak. Good news. The fellow's got a patur, got a release from army service. So Rabbi Spector looked at me and said, "That's amazing news. Thank you so much. You made my day." And then a third time, another one came in. Now you would think at this point,